A lot of people, I talk a lot about woke stuff. Right. In the comments say woke just means awake to social injustices. Right. Are they right? Are they sort of half right? What does it really mean?
Well, it's a bit like saying, gay just means being happy, right? So words can change their meaning over time. And yes, at one time, that's what it meant. But of course, that's not what it means at all now. I mean, the way I define woke, it's very simple. It's a one-sentence definition, making sacred of historically marginalized race, gender, and sexual minorities, making them sacred. That is woke. It's not being awake to injustice. Now, of course, actually, if you want to stretch this out, you can say, well, these ideas started out doing good things. Actually, we don't like, Jim Crow segregation or forcing women to be in the home or gays in the closet or whatever it is. So, of course, you need to be awake to injustice in that sense. But then to sort of push it in the direction that it's been pushed, where you're now canceling people and you're teaching people that, whiteness is some disease. So clearly what you have is some good intentions which have just been pushed way beyond an optimum point in the name of social justice.
Would it be fair to say that almost every bad ideology historically where people end up getting murdered and killed started with those kinds of good intentions?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of ideas are like a fire. You want to be close enough so that it keeps you warm. You're too far away. If we don't have enough humanitarianism or equality, then it's going to be a pretty cold place. If you get too close, you burn your hand in the fire. And that's kind of where we are on a lot of these so-called good ideas like egalitarianism and humanitarianism, as we've pushed it to an extreme. So this be kind slogan, which is used to justify a lot of this stuff, it's be super kind to biological males who want to enter a woman's space, or an immigrant who wants to sort of come in across the water and just show up to a wealthier country. It's not particularly kind to other people, like women who don't want a male in their space, or people who don't want their country to be transformed overnight. So it's actually very deceptive phrasing. But what we're living through is really the diminishing returns and overshooting of a lot of these ideas.
Is that what maybe happened if we look back at the 1950s? Maybe there was religious conservatism, and that also felt to them at the time like be kind.
Well, religious conservatism has gone through a lot of eddies, and I would say, the height of that might have been, there were certain moments like in the 1920s. I'm trying to think of sort of the extreme of Protestant Christian religious zealotry, There were the Great Awakenings in the 19th century. Maybe there was some extremism there, but, I think broadly what we've been living through for the last century is the march of liberalism, the idea of the individual being emancipated from the community, humanitarianism, kind of protecting minorities and being kind to them, and equality, this idea of trying to equalize people by, first by class, but then later by race, gender, sexuality. All of those ideas have been taken way too far. And that's why we're in such trouble now. And that's kind of a big theme of my book, is it's not just cultural Marxists who want to overthrow capitalism and lost faith in the working class. The Chris Rufo and Francis Fukuyama and others make that argument, Yasha Monk. They're kind of making this argument that it was Marxism gone awry, and so they turned from class to identity. My argument is much different. It's sort of saying it's that kind of very humanitarian, almost Christian, social democratic, bleeding heart liberalism. And that's just gone way too far on identity. And so those people thought, okay, we found the Holy Grail. We just got to turn the volume dial to 100 for being super, super kind to anybody who's a racial minority, a sexual minority, and a woman, and we'll just crank that up. And what could go wrong? Well, you got cancel culture, you got, gender ideology and trans and activism, and you've got, attacking your own country's history. I mean, that's critical race theory. And so this is what we're living with, and that polarizes people, leads to division. It means you can't control crime properly. You can't control your borders properly. You can't do education. You can't recruit a military. All of these things kind of flow out of the excesses of this kind of liberal humanitarianism. So where I'm kind of trying to, I'm making a different argument from people, many of those, like Rufo and like Fukuyama, who are ascribing this to critical theory and Marcuse and cultural Marxism. And I'm saying, that's part of what's going on. But we have to look at this longer tradition of liberal humanitarianism, what we might think of as bleeding heart liberalism, as essentially going over the edge.